What is up, guys? Gamer here, and today I am bringing you guys the start of something new on this channel. To give a little background on the reasoning for doing this, a couple of days ago I made a 1,500 subscriber thank you video, and in that video I asked for you guys to comment down below some new series you'd like to see, some new things you'd like to see me do, and one of those things was to do a podcast. It did end up getting the most likes, and not only just that, but it sounded like something I would have a lot of fun doing because I've always liked sports analyzing and looking at what's going on in the news and just kind of getting an idea to talk about it would be really cool. So I figured I would take full advantage of it, and I know I kind of jumped into it pretty quick. So let's get a few things situated before we get going. Now, I understand the wall behind me right over here, a little bit bleak. I'm going to actually try to buy some posters or something for future podcasts so we can have more than just a little cat post over, where's over there. And my blanket's over there. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad right now. And then my camera is just my computer integrated camera, and we'll try to upgrade that too in the soon future, or in the near future. But for now, this is kind of the base beginning of it. And before we get started, one more thing I'd like to say: please go follow me on Twitter at the Real LA Gamer. I'm gonna have a link to it in the description below, and the writing, of course, would have popped up right there. I'm gonna edit that in there, so I'd really appreciate that. For this first episode, I'm just going to talk about three basic things, talk about some news and opinions going on in football, then baseball, then basketball. Those are the three sports I'm most I just know the most about. I mean, I'm not a huge soccer or hockey fan. I need to learn more about those two sports and get a better idea of the players in those sports before I feel comfortable talking about them. But for the purpose of the Twitter, for now, it's just I'm talking about news and stuff. It's not the most entertaining stuff. That'll be the idea of this first podcast. But if you guys can tweet me questions, comment down below questions that you have, I would discuss them in the next podcast. Usually more broad questions like who do I think will be MVP, constantly changing views. Now, I will talk about my MVP predictions and things of that nature in the next, for the three sports I mentioned. And we're going to continue to talk about that pretty soon. But I think it'd be cool if I can kind of start my own little thing where you guys ask me questions and I'll make a little podcast and answer all of them. So also pretty soon this could also turn into a live stream type thing where I do live podcasts and you guys can live comment me questions while I'm doing it. But we'll wait and see how this first video goes before we jump too far ahead. Either way, I have this little notebook paper here. I got all my information written down right here. So I'd like to discuss some things going on in the league. I have it all written down, so we'll talk about it, get some opinions on it, and get a better idea as to what I think this is going to mean for things around the league. So something I want to talk about first, Odell recently was issued a 1-game suspension. This suspension will keep him from playing versus Minnesota. So it's actually a pretty big loss because Minnesota, I believe, is 9-4 right now. Oh, gotta get the lighting back. The camera, like I said, is not good. So it's a pretty big loss because this is a necessary game to win for the Giants. I believe they're 6-7. The Redskins have the division lead by, I think, 1 game. So the Giants are going to need a win, basically win out, to even have a chance at making the playoffs. And the Vikings, of course, 9-4, have probably the top 10 record in the league, I think, and they're doing really well right now. So I think it's going to be really difficult for the Giants to try to win that game without Odell. I think if you guys watch the game, but the Giants versus the Panthers, and you watch the little Odell-Norman matchup, and if you haven't, there's videos of it on NFL.com, and there's things like that I highly recommend you guys check out. But I was watching the game live, and it really was ridiculous. Odell would intentionally go out of his way to try to basically knock out Norman. Odell finished the game with like 76 yards and a touchdown. He didn't finish that bad. I mean, he did terrible. He didn't have a reception until the third quarter, but then finished off primarily with 2 big catches in the fourth, which made up most of his stat line. But for the most part, it wasn't very good. He obviously was frustrated. There was one play I know in particular that really triggered something in my mind was Norman was blocking, I think, or no, he was going in for a tackle, and there was like multiple guys tackling the running back at the same time. But Odell came out of nowhere and dove headfirst, helmet to helmet, collided with Josh Norman, and that's a serious thing to do. That could end careers. That could cause serious head injuries. That could cause you not even your career, but it honestly could cost your life. It could cost your mental well-being. Those are things that you just don't do. So I think the 1-game suspension is being issued is very fair. I think it's going to suck for the Giants, and it sucks for Odell too because he was of course on pace for another great year. And I don't think the 1-game suspension will slow down his stats too much, but he probably will lose his touchdown lead and things of that nature. But either way, in my opinion, he deserved that one. That was ridiculous what he was doing. And then That was the thing I wanted to probably talk about the most out of the next few things I'm going to talk about. Next up, we have T.J. Yates, the running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, tore his ACL. That's a rough one. That's going to be a rough one for Bortles primarily, who I don't know if they have much of a running game behind Yates. I don't quite remember. I remember they had Toby Gerhart. I don't even know if he's their backup still or how that would all work out, but I just don't see it. So them having the same type of offense without T.J. Yates, who hopefully will be back next year. He probably will actually have to come in probably about midseason because ACLs are tough ones to fight off. There's very few people who can come back quickly with a torn ACL and be successful. A la Adrian Peterson, he was one of the few guys who managed to do that, but it's a rare occurrence where a player can actually do that. So rough loss for them. Next up, Marcus Mariota is out for the season with an MCL sprain. So that's another rough hit for the Titans, but it's not really a big deal. They have one of the worst records in the league. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're mathematically eliminated. So not the biggest issue. Just I think it's best that Mariota just gets rested. Luckily, it's just a sprain, not a tear. A sprain can easily heal, and just give him a few weeks. I think he'll be fine. But something to mention for you guys, fantasy football, whatever you want to do. Maybe you're a Titans fan. That's what's up with Marcus Mariota. Next up, some news that's a little bit shaky that you guys probably may have not even heard about, just because this guy's not even really big news anymore. Justin Blackman got another DUI. We'll discuss. There's obvious issues there. I mean, the dude's gotten somewhere between like he's gotten so many DUIs. I mean, it's unbelievable that I don't know if he's been in prison yet or what the issue is there. But I don't think he should be getting special advantages just because he's in the NFL. I think there's an obvious issue there that needs to be addressed. And I don't know if he's played in years. He was selected, I believe, in the first round by the Jaguars back in about 2011, somewhere around there. Expected to be a big playmaking wide receiver, but obviously he's let his I don't know, outside of the game, the situations affect him. Primarily, he's obviously an alcoholic. I mean, if you're constantly getting DUIs, there's obviously an issue there. And the fact is, he never seems to learn from his mistakes. I mean, drinking a ton is an issue within itself, but not having the capability to understand that you can't drive under those circumstances and to do that over and over again, there's obviously a issue there in terms of, I don't know, something mentally is just not right with him right now. And honestly, I think his career is probably done because it's been about 5-6 years, and he's done it every single year, constantly, never been able to stay on the field. When he was on the field, he was all right. I think he has potential, and I think he would have been really good. But the fact of the matter is, if he hasn't played in 5 years, he's already ruined all his potential. He's only going to be as good as he's ruined a lot of his opportunities to be as good as he can get. And not only that, but with, like I said, his inability to stay on the field, there's not much trust there. I believe probably by the Jaguars staff, and I doubt they even want him on the team anymore. I don't even know if he is on the team anymore. They may have just dropped him. I don't pay attention to that because, like I said, he's not even really much to talk about anymore. And then lastly, LaShawn McCoy tore his MCL, and that's not the biggest issue for the Bills. I mean, I think they're also mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Also, they have Carlos Williams, the backup, who, when when McCoy was out with an injury earlier this season and came in, did a phenomenal job, and I think he can come back and do a great job once again. I don't think losing McCoy is going to be the biggest hit. If anything, it will give Williams a better chance to develop a little bit more. Not only that, Williams is nice and young. He might end up actually just winning the starting role over LaShawn McCoy for the next couple of seasons. Which leads me to one more discussion, actually, that wasn't even on this paper. It seems like this was the year of bust free agencies, especially in running backs. I mean, we got DeMarco, who went to the Eagles, who's getting the same amount of snaps as Ryan Matthews. Now, I mean, they split carries between 3 running backs over in Philadelphia, and DeMarco was trying to become a number 1 running back there. But here's the thing, people discuss this a lot. DeMarco Murray is what you would call a north and south runner. He does best when he's like kind of powering up the middle and just kind of goes like that. Then there's other guys like Darren Sproles or LaShawn McCoy who fit well on the Philadelphia Eagles, who are more kind of side-to-side runners where they have great agility. They don't really lose much speed by doing spins and jukes, and those are typically the players that fit in the Eagles system. I think Chip Kelly just signed DeMarco because he was a good player for the Cowboys and didn't quite think about how that would transfer into his system, and obviously it didn't transfer very well because he's not having a good season whatsoever. He had a few nice weeks, but I think he hasn't totaled 50 yards in the past 4 or 5 weeks. It's an issue. So he didn't do well. Then of course McCoy for the Bills. I mean, primarily he was injured a lot, but I think even when he was while he was actually playing, I'm not for sure. I don't think he was performing all that well. So We'll continue to move on. Now, we're past the actual real life news. Now I'm going to start talking about more opinionated things. For starters, probably the most important thing to talk about opinion wise is the MVP discussion. So, um, earlier in the season, when both the Panthers and Patriots were undefeated, Brady was my selection. But due to the fact that they are still undefeated, and it's obviously by the hands of this guy, Cam Newton's my MVP right now. I think it's a consensus MVP. I don't even see an argument for the other two guys I'm about to name. They're just, if there was going to be an argument, it would be for these two other guys. So Cam Newton, I think, if I remember correctly, I mean, last week against the Giants, threw for 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards, 100 rushing yards. Unbelievable. I mean, it's really unbelievable. He's only thrown like 3 interceptions in the past 8 weeks. The first like half of the season, he was a little bit rough, a little bit shaky. He still managed to win all of his games, of course, but statistically, it wasn't all the way there. The case wasn't all the way made yet, and that's why Brady had the upper hand. But in the past like 6 weeks or so, he's been dominating, especially in touchdown to interception ratio. He's been doing a great job, and then he continues to run the ball at a high efficiency, not really fumbling a whole lot, trucking defensive players. It's unbelievable to see that from a quarterback. So yeah, my choice is Cam Newton for MVP. My other two people who are in the conversation, of course, Brady's still in the conversation for me, and then it's Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer has led the Cardinals to, I believe, a 12-2 record right now, and doing an unbelievable job. I think he's got the best QBR in the league, and he's doing great. So he's the reason that he's up there for me, and then Brady is up there just because, I mean, you can look at his stats. He's doing a phenomenal job. It's just that those two losses back to back they lost to the Broncos. I don't remember the other team they lost to, but that hurts. That hurts his candidacy for MVP, and I think it's kind of just knocked him out of the race. Like I said, I don't think Palmer or Brady stand a chance against Cam Newton unless Cam Newton somehow manages to lose the next 2 weeks, at which case you can make a case for the other two players. Let me get the lighting back here. Like I said, it's rough, guys. This camera lighting is rough. So that's basically it for me in terms of them in the MVP discussion. I didn't write Rookie of the Year things or anything like that yet. I will have a Rookie of the Year pick for the NBA, but for NFL, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I don't know any rookies, or I guess I would name Amari Cooper as a dominant player. I think we can say Derek Carr is a dominant second-year player coming back. He's got like 28 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, somewhere around there. I know he's doing a phenomenal job. I mean, those are some of the guys I named. The Raiders have a lot of potential. Khalil Mack, of course. I think they have had a great draft the past couple of years. Me personally, I'm a Chargers fan. We're not even going to talk about that. That's literally the worst discussion I could possibly make for you guys. They're like 4-11. They're absolutely terrible, so we won't discuss them. And then I'm trying to think of other legitimate Rookie of the Year players. I just can't make a case for many other guys. I know there's more on the top of my head, and you guys will probably comment some down below. But I can't remember them. This will be something we'll discuss probably in the next podcast. And discussing that, the podcast will probably be once every 1 to 2 weeks, probably more like once every 1 week, or once every week. But for this one specifically, I'll make another one about 2 weeks from now because I'm going to be out of town the second week of my break, so I'm not going to be able to post any podcasts. I'm going to be nowhere near my setup. So next up, my playoff pick. So I do see this, or the Seahawks did just clinch the playoffs, so the Seahawks are going to be a playoff team. And the Seahawks are honestly on a roll where I think they're a dominant team. But I did just mention the Panthers, did mention Cam Newton. So for me personally, I think it's going to be a close game. I do, but I think in the NFC Championship game, it's going to come down to the Panthers versus the Seahawks. And I see the Panthers taking over that game and taking the win. So I see the Panthers coming out of the NFC as the top team. And then out of the AFC, I think the top two teams are between the Patriots and the Broncos. And I want to say real quick, the NFC, just to mention out there, the Cardinals are a considerable pick. Like, I'm not going to single them out. I'm not going to say they don't have a chance, because they do. I just don't think they have the same chance as the Panthers or the Seahawks. Although I do love the Cardinals a lot. I love the way they're playing. Also, Tyrann Mathieu did tear his ACL. That's something I almost forgot to talk about. And I think that ruins their legitimacy a lot, because I think Mathieu is one of the best defensive players, or one of the best defensive safeties in the whole league. And losing him, I think, will kind of affect their defense. It kind of ruined their momentum a little bit. So I think that within itself could ruin their chances at the title. But then, like I said, out of AFC, we have the Patriots and the Broncos. Some other teams to consider. I mean, we can We can name the Bengals, but they lost Andy Dalton, so I think that might knock him out. I think he might come back for playoff time, but even then, I don't see them beating the Broncos or the Patriots. I think Brock Osweiler has done a great job since taking over that starting role for the Broncos at the quarterback position, especially with Peyton Manning struggling for some reason beyond me. I know that he's getting older, so but he's had such a major drop off from this year to last year, and I don't understand the reasoning behind that. I'm sure the Broncos don't understand either, but because of that, Osweiler has more or less earned his way into that starting spot. So that's what's going on right now. And my choice there is that the Patriots will beat the Broncos, and then when the Patriots play the Panthers, I see the Panthers beating the Patriots. I think that'll be a close game too, but I think honestly, I think the Panthers Seahawks game is going to be closer than the Panthers Patriots game because I do think the Seahawks are better than the Patriots. Despite the Patriots beating them in the final or in the Super Bowl last year, I do see the Seahawks as the better team, especially with the role they've been on. Look at Russell Wilson; he's doing a phenomenal job. I think the only real issue with the Seahawks right now is their running game because they lost Marshawn. I don't know when he's going to be back. I think he might be back. Is he going to be back soon? I don't remember. But then Rawls, their backup, who was looking like a little beast mode, he's out for the rest of the season, I believe. I think he tore something. So it's going to be an issue. And that's all I really have to talk about in terms of NFL. Like I said, there's more discussions that can be based on this if you comment some ideas for NFL conversations or you tweet me at the Real LA Gamer. So now let's move on to MLB. MLB and NBA, we don't have as much to talk about. I think NFL is basically taking over most of my personal sports life right now because I've been spending a lot of time watching football, especially, yesterday was Sunday, which I need to discuss. Today for me is December 21st. This video probably won't be up till the 22nd, so that's the reason why some of this information might be about a day behind. So for the MLB, we have a few little things, I guess. One big thing in the news is Hayward apparently called the Cardinals team old, and that's primarily the reason he chose to go to the Cubs over the Cardinals. Apparently the Cardinals manager, Matheny, is not very happy about those comments, so there's a little bit of friction there. I don't understand the reasoning behind it, though. It's not like in baseball, there's not really any physical contact, really. I mean, it's not like football, it's not like basketball, you're not really hitting each other, so I don't really understand how you can get payback on a guy. I don't personally understand it. But either way, there's not a whole lot to talk about in baseball. I think most of the big signings have already been discussed. We got David Price going to Boston for an unbelievable amount of money. We got Greinke going over to Arizona to play for the Diamondbacks, and these discussions I could talk about, but I think you guys have already known these for a while, and the discussion's already probably been made about them. So I think for the purpose of originality, we'll just let them stay by themselves. So I think all I really need to talk about now is my picks in terms of playoffs, some MVP and some Cy Young picks, and I think I'll discuss those and get your guys' opinions on that as well. So my American League pick personally is the Kansas City Royals. I think they're going to go back. I know they lost Zobrist, they lost Cueto, which is going to be rough, but they were a dominant team even before they had Cueto. I think they could fill up the hole of Zobrist. I mean, their team is nice. Their team is very young too. So I think that's where we really got to think about how dominant their team really is that although they lost players, since they're so young, they're still getting better. So I think they're going to be completely fine. And then we need to discuss my National League pick, which is going to be the Chicago Cubs. I don't really see any argument for any other National League team, which is unbelievable because the Cardinals are a great team. The Pirates did a great job last year. The Nationals are a good team. I think they have a chance. Then we can name the Dodgers, the Giants. There's some good teams. So there's obviously other teams in there, but I think right now I would pick the Cubs 50 times before I picked anybody else because I did not expect their core of rookies to be that good last year. So let's discuss this. I mean, they got a rookie core that was unbelievable, led by Chris Bryant. Then they have guys like Addison Russell, who actually they might have traded them, but they did trade the original shortstop. Man, I can't believe I forgot his name, but they did trade their original shortstop, Starling Castro. And then they, of course, still have Anthony Rizzo. And then, of course, the recent addition, Jason Hayward. It's unbelievable. Their team is it's light years above any other team, personally. I mean, considering the fact that all the rookies are probably going to develop and continue to get good. Don't mind my cat right over here. He's going to be walking around a little bit. I mean, the fact that they already made those moves right there, and they're only going to continue to get better, more than likely, unless somehow their rookies don't continue to improve, which is it's just not going to happen. their team is the team to beat, and I do think they're going to beat the Royals. I think it's going to be a sweep. Honestly, I think, like I said, I think their team is way better than any other team right now. I think, of course, a couple of weeks into the season, my opinion could change. There could be some changes. You never know when a team will just light up and just start to absolutely dominate. But right now we're going to talk about our MVP, or my MVP and Cy Young choices. Now, American League MVP, I have Mike Trout. Reasoning behind that is obvious. He's been the runner-up to MVP out of his 4 years of his career. Then, of course, won the MVP 2 years ago. The only reason he wasn't the MVP 4 years straight, primarily, is because the Angels have been making the playoffs. I personally am an Angels fan. I think this year they can't make the playoffs, though, and realistically, Trout's whole MVP case is determined on if they make the playoffs or not. We all know he's going to have the best stats, hitting stats, fielding stats, things like that in the American League. I mean, he's one of those types of players where he's always on top of the, he's on top of the boards in every single statistic. He's just that type of guy. So he's my pick there. And then I see a repeat over in the National League with Bryce Harper. Now I can make a case for some other guys, maybe Paul Goldschmidt, maybe Clayton Kershaw coming back so strong he can win the MVP alongside a Cy Young award. That's possible. But for me, I think Bryce Harper established himself as such a great player last season, despite the fact that before last season I never saw Bryce Harper as that great of a player because he constantly was injured or he wasn't putting up that great of stats. I think last year was just the year where he finally found his rhythm, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon, especially considering the fact he's so young and he's such an athlete. I just see him continuing to dominate the league. He might even do better than last year, honestly. That's how high of expectations I have set for him. And then the Cy Young Awards, I'm going with such basic Cy Young Awards. I'm honestly actually not even going to guess. I'm not going to make any off-ball guesses about it. I'm going to go with the most likely options. My National League Cy Young Award winner is going to be Clayton Kershaw. He's a candidate for it every single year. And I've never been a fan of him in terms of playoff pitching. I think playoff pitching, he needs a lot of work, realistically. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he actually has an issue with trying to pitch under pressure or what it is, but I think that's the only real issue you can find on his resume as a pitcher is the fact that he can't perform at the same level as he does in the regular season in the playoffs. That's the only real issue I see in him. And then American League Cy Young, my pick is Dallas Keuchel. I think, if I remember correctly, he was the Cy Young this last year. I don't see him getting any worse. I could see the Astros even becoming a better team because they have a lot of youth in their team, so I see a lot of guys developing. And with Dallas Keuchel kind of leading that rotation and him probably going to get more, he's probably going to get more run support because, like I said, the Astros are going to become a better team. I don't see any reason why he would not win another Cy Young award. And so that's all of my picks for baseball. And now lastly, we're going to talk about basketball real quick, and that'll be the end of this first podcast. So basketball, something that we need to discuss, a big move overall for basketball that was just done recently that you guys may have not heard about. They have changed the wait period for Hall of Fame enshrinement from five seasons following retirement to only 4 years, which puts Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal, and Yao Ming as top candidates for the Hall of Fame this year, which I think is great. I think, I don't know exactly why they did it, but I think there are people who occasionally come out of, or they retire and then they have immediate issues with health and stuff like that. And honestly, I think it's better that people get their recognition early on. That way, you just never know what's going to happen. I think everybody deserves to be alive to see them again. If they're great players, they get enshrined in the Hall of Fame. And not only that, but I think it's better that we don't wait so many years. I mean, there's people who, 2 years from now, when these guys, AI Shaq, would normally be inducted in the Hall of Fame, there's probably some young kids out there who don't even know who these guys are, and they're being inducted to the Hall of Fame. So I think shortening the wait time is better because it gives you an opportunity to vote people in immediately after. There's a shorter period of time, so you get to remember their career a little bit more. You get to remember their legacy, and usually you then get to vote for people or get to see people enshrined in the Hall of Fame that you actually remember watching rather than it being such a long shot from what you're used to seeing. So don't know if that makes sense. I was on a little bit of a rant there, but I think that was a good change for their for the National Basketball Association, the NBA. So we're moving on. We're going to go to The return of Kyrie Irving. Now he managed to score 12 points in 18 minutes. I didn't actually check who they were playing. I probably should check that, but he did score 12 points in 18 minutes. So it's a nice little sign for his return. Now, something I did read is it's probably going to be multiple games. Slow transition back into like a 30 minute plus type of game for him. You know, he only played 18 minutes, and I do see it taking a little while longer before he gets back into his normal rhythm of getting 30 to 40 minutes a game. Of course, just to rest his kneecap, which I mean, he honestly did come back, I think, sooner than some expectations. So he's doing a good job coming back, and hopefully they got about 3 or 4 games, I think, this week. They got the Christmas game against the Warriors, and I'm sure he's going to be fine to get some extra minutes there. So I highly recommend you guys watch that game because I'm sure that'll be a really good game. Another thing I want to talk about, Paul George was recently fined $35,000 for apparently insulting the referees and using profanity, which is not the first case for Paul George in his career. He did get fined $10,000 a couple of years ago. I don't know. I mean, he also tweeted out at Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, saying that he wanted a whole new batch of referees. So that's quite a bold comment from Paul George. Obviously, he's upset. I mean, I think I haven't watched much of his games lately. I don't know where a lot of this frustration is coming from, but he's one of the top players in the league. I'm sure there's reasoning supporting his frustration. I highly doubt he's making up these claims for no reason. He has no benefit for doing so. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on in terms of why he's not getting his calls, or maybe he's just been unlucky the past couple of weeks. Either way, he has a reason to be frustrated. I don't think the Pacers are performing as well as he was hoping they would. So that's something to discuss with Paul George. And on that same subject, Rajon Rondo was recently I don't remember the whole punishment, but he was punished for calling out a ref and saying some extremely horrible things to him. I'm not even going to repeat them. I don't feel like that's necessary. You can look him up if you want. If you want to look at what Rajon Rondo said to the referee, you can go ahead. But my personal opinion, I just don't think there's any acceptance for that. I think he should have been severely punished for that, especially in today's type of society. I don't think there's any room for stereotypes like that, and I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think whether he knew the referee was gay or not. I don't think it's fair. You just don't use that word, especially not in today's society. So I don't think there's any acceptance for that. I don't think there should be any leniency in terms of punishment, and I think that more than likely will stain his career in some sense, because for me personally, I don't really even know him as a player, but I've already lost respect for him. I'm already going to start wishing bad things for him. It's honestly the truth. It's too bad that not only that he did it, but then he got caught doing it. It's a bad thing for him. So we're going to move on. The one thing that we need to discuss is the Warriors streak. I think that's a team that you need to talk about. When you're talking about the NBA now, you talk about the Warriors. It's just how it is, especially with the way they're performing. Of course, coming off the finals win against the Cavaliers in, I think, 5 or 6 games. They come back here and win 24 straight. I mean, that's how it is. They ended up losing, of course, to the Bucks last Saturday or Sunday, somewhere around there. And so they were 24-1. They ended up getting their payback against the Bucks recently. And I mean, big thing for them. Another big win. Personally, if we're gonna discuss their comparison to the Bulls, I remember the other day in the news, Charles Barkley discussed that he thought. Let's get the lighting back real quick. He discussed saying that the Bulls, the 95-96 Bulls team, would destroy the Warriors team. If we're gonna talk about my personal opinion now, I wasn't even alive during this 95-96 Bulls team, so I don't feel right to argue on it. But I do know Michael Jordan. I do know Scottie Pippen. I have watched old school games, and in all honesty, I would still give the win without a doubt to the Bulls. I think the Warriors would win a couple of games, but I just don't know how Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson could continue to shoot at the level they shoot at if they have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen guarding them. I still think it'd be interesting games. I would love to watch those, but just natural ability, natural athleticism, and things of that nature, I just think the Bulls are unmatched. I think the Warriors, of course, will break that 72-10 record that the Bulls set that year, but I don't think they would beat them in a series. I think that Bulls team is going to remain probably the best team of all time. So we're gonna continue to move on and talk about some awards I see. Like I said, the main award. If we're gonna talk about Coach of the Year award, I don't really know. I mean, I guess you just give it to Steve Kerr if they beat 72-10, even though he's been out, and Luke Walton has been their interim coach. But I don't really even care about that award, to be honest. I just don't. And so we're going to talk about Rookie of the Year and MVP. Rookie of the Year, my consensus pick is Karl Anthony Towns. I think the only other two guys you can put into consideration are Kristaps Porzingis and Jahlil Okafor. Okafor because he's leading the rookies in points by a bit, and he's still averaging about 8 rebounds a game. But I think because the 76ers have only won one game or so this season, I think that kind of ruins his legitimacy. Now, I know the Rookie of the Year award is more of a individual award rather than a team award, but I think if you can only win one game in 30 chances, and even though he's putting up good stats, that ruins his case to me. I think the fact that Karl Anthony Towns is making the Timberwolves a better team, and while doing so, he's putting up very nice individual stats. I think that puts him as the top of my list. I think Kristaps Porzingis is another great player, but he's about 2 points behind Karl Anthony Towns and about a rebound behind Karl Anthony Towns. So Porzingis is a monster, no denying it, but I think he's just just half a step behind Karl Anthony Towns. I think he definitely can reclaim the award though. He can come back and play great and become the Rookie of the Year because it's still a close race. So we'll see. And then MVP, on the discussion of the Warriors, I think the MVP is Stephen Curry. I think you can make arguments for other players. Russell Westbrook's putting up a great stat line. There's some other guys. I mean, I just don't see how you can argue against it. I mean, I've always been a firm believer that the MVP goes to the best player on the best team or the player who makes their team the best. I mean, I think there's some players who single-handedly can make their team a lot better. But I think if we're thinking for a team as a whole, I don't think the Warriors would be even half the team they are without Stephen Curry. And I think that he's probably a large reason why they're doing so well. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from their teammates because their team is stacked. Let's be honest. Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut, Harrison Barnes, Iguodala, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, then of course Stephen Curry. I mean, their team is dominant. So there's no denying that their team would still be good without Stephen Curry, but they're not a championship team without him. They're not a top 4 seed in the West without him. And right now they're probably going to blow away with the number 1 seed in the West. Right now they probably, I haven't checked, but they probably have a pretty big lead over anybody else right now. So right now, yeah, my consensus pick there is going to be Stephen Curry. I just don't see an argument for anybody else. You can make one if you want, but that's just my personal pick now. Now we're just going to finish up. That's all the news I had to discuss. That's all I really want to talk about. Hopefully that was a successful first podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Now I know, like I said, I'm going to put some posters back here pretty soon. Hopefully get some new stuff so it's not so bland and it's not so boring in here. And then try to get a better camera, try to invest in one of those, and so we can get better podcasts going on and better, probably maybe even a better environment to talk about these things would be nice. Oh, and one last thing, if you guys would like to see me get some more people on this little podcast and get some more friends, and maybe I know a lot of friends that I love to talk sports to and talk sports with. So if you'd like to see me get some friends on the podcast, have some guys to talk to, and so we can discuss sports collectively, I can do that. Or if you just prefer me doing this individually, I can continue to do that as well. I think the best way to contact me is by commenting down below, or like I said, you can message me on Twitter at the Real LA Gamer. I feel weird doing that, kind of shouting out my own Twitter, but I did just create it, so you guys if you went and followed it right now, you'd probably fight for one of my top 5 follows, and I would that would be cool. That'd be a cool thing. So I would appreciate that, and I'd appreciate if you guys tweeted out at me and got me I don't know, if you just tweeted at me some questions. That'd be really nice for the next podcast. I will continuously tweet out at you guys to hopefully comment down some podcasts or not podcasts, but podcast questions and podcast ideas and things of that nature. So I would really appreciate that. I think this was really cool. I really enjoyed doing this. Like I said, I love analyzing sports. I love just talking about sports. And I think this went really well, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please click like button below. Make sure to comment or tweet at me your opinion of this and what I can do to make it better. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned to this series and other series I got going on my channel. And I really appreciate all your guys' support and all my series I'm doing so far. And let's keep it going. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.